Welcome back to another video of the Novation Launchkey. I have the 25 key version, which is perfect for portability, perfect for traveling. I'm actually away from home as I'm recording this video, and I put this in my suitcase, wrapped it in a bunch of clothes, and it's perfectly fine. Lightweight, yet it has the full-size keys, which are perfect for my big chunky hands. A few months ago, I did an unboxing video of this controller and promised during that video that I would do a more detailed look at this once I had more time to play around with it. Well, I've had that time. I've recorded a bunch of songs with this, and I thought I would provide some feedback for you and a little bit of a how-to in terms of changing some settings on the keyboard and overall how this works best with your DAW if you're using it in standard MIDI mode. Basically, there's two modes that you can use this controller in. Novation has their own software called In Control, and this works, as you can see up here, the In Control badge works with Novation's controllers and with the most popular DAWs so that it auto maps a lot of plugins to the controls that you have on the keyboard. During this video, I'll talk about the basic mapping mode, the different MIDI channels that the different controllers are assigned to, as well as how to change some of the basic parameters on the controller. Because I use Traction as my DAW and I haven't messed around with the In Control plugin, I'm going to leave that for another video. So we're going to go off the basic mapping mode here and talk about some of the details of this controller. First thing that I'm going to do is plug this in via USB. It doesn't come with a power adapter, and I haven't gotten one for it because, honestly, powering it off my laptop is easy enough, and it does come out of the box with this nice green USB cable. What I'm going to do is plug that into my laptop USB. You'll notice it runs through a sequence of cool little lights, and our LCD screen is just a single line display that shows the value of the sliders or the knobs, as well as shows the octaves as you transpose down or up. As you can see, 1, 2, -1, -2. As I've spent more time playing this, I do have to say I like the way that the controls feel. I've had this for a few months, have played it quite a bit, and everything still feels very nice and solid. A lot of controllers out there have a lot of wiggle in the knobs and the sliders. This slider does have a little bit of play, but honestly, I don't use this slider a whole lot. These knobs feel good, the pads feel good, they are touch-sensitive pads, and the keybed, of course, feels good. I am a fan of Novation's keybeds. The pitch and modulation wheels don't have a lot of play in them and still feel really solid. A few other controls we have on here are the transport controls for your DAW, as well as a couple of in-control buttons and a couple of forward and back buttons here. We also have track forward and back, and some of these serve different functions to control settings within the controller. First of all, when you power up the controller, it always defaults to MIDI channel 1 as the channel for the controls and the keybed. The pads always default to 10. I don't believe there's any way to change the channel the pads are going out on. So if you're going to be using the pads to control a drum sound in your DAW, make sure the track is set to MIDI channel 10. That way these control the drum sounds within your DAW. The keyboard and the other controls by default when you power up the controller are processed through MIDI channel 1. We can go ahead and change that by holding down both the track back and track forward buttons. As you can see here, it says MIDI channel right there. Hold those down and you see that there's a 1 that blinks there. That is the default channel. You can change that by going forward or back on the track buttons to change what MIDI channel the keybed and the controllers send out. Leave that for a couple of seconds and it switches off and saves that setting. Unfortunately, you have to change this every time you power up the keyboard if you're using a channel other than MIDI channel 1. The transport controls here, if you're using In Control, will control the transport controls in your DAW, but in basic mapping mode, which we're using here, each button transmits its own MIDI channel that you can then assign to the different controls in your DAW. The same thing goes for any of these controls. They send out a specific MIDI channel, and that can be programmed inside your DAW to control different functions. I'll cover what each channel is in a couple of minutes. Currently, the octave plus and minus buttons change the octave of the keyboard. So if you're playing here, you're at middle C and you octave up, you're going to be at the C above middle C. And continuing on, you basically jump octaves. But if we hold these two down at the same time, you'll notice that the LCD starts to blink, and we can move this to adjust the semitone increments instead of jumping an octave, just moving up a single semitone. Another function that we can set inside the controller is the velocity curve of the keybed. This isn't going to adjust the weight of the keys, but it will adjust the velocity or the dynamics of what you're playing. In order to adjust this, we hold the top in control button, and then we can use the transport controls, the rewind, fast forward, stop, and play buttons to adjust the velocity curve. You'll notice on the display when I hold the top in control button and I press the rewind transport control button, that now my velocity curve is set to low. This means that when I'm playing, I have to hit the keys harder to get more volume out of the sound. Again, I could hold this and I could press the fast forward control button, and on the display it says high. What this is going to do is I won't have to play the keys as hard to get more volume out of the sounds. I tend to be a harder player, so I tend to hit the keys a lot harder without meaning to, so a low velocity curve might be good for me. Again, we can hold this top in control button and we can press the stop transport control. Now velocity curves is off, and no matter how hard I press the keys, it's always going to give me the maximum volume for the sounds I'm playing. I don't ever use this setting because as a keyboardist, I want the dynamics in the sounds, and if you turn the velocity curves off, you can't control the dynamics of the sound. The last setting for the velocity curves is holding this and pressing the play transport control. This is the normal mode up on the screen, it's NOR, and this is what the keyboard defaults to when you power it on. This is the curve that I use all of the time, and I found that it generally works with a variety of instruments. The only thing where I might switch it to a low velocity curve is if I'm playing a piano. Sometimes the piano sound is a little bit hard to control the dynamics of in the normal velocity curve range. One more thing to note is that the velocity curves are only affecting the key bed, not the drum pads. Unfortunately, you can't change the velocity curves of the drum pads. Honestly, I don't use these as much as I thought I would. I'm not a huge fan of the velocity curve. I feel like I have to press them very hard to get enough volume out, so I'm a little disappointed in that, but I do have another 16 pad drum controller that I use to program and play drums with my virtual instruments. So what I want to do next is getting a little technical, but hopefully this will help some of you who are actually programming your DAW so that you can control the different functions inside your DAW with the controls on the keyboard. Keep in mind that this is using the basic MIDI setup, not using Novation's In Control plugin. What I'm going to do is go through each control on the keyboard and tell you the MIDI message number that's being outputted when you change the control. You can see here on the screen, when I change this control, it goes from 0 to 127. This is the same whether it's the slider, whether it's one of the knobs, they all go from 0 to 127. This is also true for velocity curves of the pads and the key bed itself. If you're familiar with MIDI, you'll know that 0 is no volume at all, 127 is full volume. So if you took the velocity curves off the keyboard, all of your sound would be played at 127, which is full volume. When it comes to controls, 0 is all the way down, 127 is all the way up. So starting at the top, our first rotary control sends to message 21 through 28. Our master slider sends to message 7. Our pads send from message 40 all the way up to 51. And then this bottom row sends from 36 up to 47. The notes that these produce are E1, F1, F sharp 1, G1, C2, C sharp 2, D2, E flat 2. And the bottom row is C1, C sharp 1, D1, E flat 1, G sharp 1, A1, B flat 1, and B1. The top round button here outputs to message 104. The bottom outputs to message 105. The track left outputs to 103. Track right outputs to 102. The octave up and down do not send MIDI messages. These don't send MIDI messages either. And finally, with the transport controls, the rewind sends to MIDI message 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, and 117. If you're using the In Control plugin, it automatically maps the controls to the plugins that you're using. So if you have a virtual instrument up, the knobs will actually control settings within the virtual instrument, and there's no manual mapping that needs to take place as long as those plugins are compatible with In Control. Besides that, there's nothing else that can be programmed inside the controller itself. I've had a lot of fun with this keyboard. I've recorded some songs with it, and I've found it extremely nice and portable to be able to bring with me when I travel, as well as when I need a portable recording rig. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, hit me up below. I'll get to answering those as soon as I can. Don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful, and hit the subscribe button if you want to keep up with my channel and if you want to see more videos like this or even better. Talk to you later. Bye.